Isn't it a good feeling that the Brewers don't have to have anything to play for going into this final weekend of the season? They can reset their starting rotation, their pitching staff, and, some guys on this bullpen are going to have to earn spots in this team. We'll talk about all that coming up next here on Locked On.
You are Locked On Brewers, your daily Milwaukee Brewers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, everybody. Good to have you along here on a Friday. Heading into the weekend, I'm feeling good. There's no pressure on the Milwaukee Brewers whatsoever. The Mets are coming to town for a big 3-game series for them. They're in a dogfight for a wild card spot. And, good for them. The Milwaukee Brewers, they put themselves in this spot. They did. They put themselves in the spot because of their great play throughout the season, their consistent play, and now they have very little to worry about. In fact, they've had little to worry about since for the last month or so. Sure, the 1 or 2 seed was always in play, but it's not in play anymore. We kind of thought that, they'd be relegated to the 3 seed. I was holding out hope they would get one of those top 2 seeds. Didn't happen. So be it. Hey, I'll take the 3 seed in the National League. If you'd have told me back in March, hey, the Brewers are going to win their division, get the 3 seed, I take it every single day. Good to have you along. Chuck Freeman, Locked On Brewers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. We are your team every day. And on a side note, thank you, everybody. You guys DMing me on Twitter, on YouTube, or whatever, the messages you send supporting this podcast, and really, really a lot of excitement. And I love this time of the year in Milwaukee, in the state of Wisconsin, because over the next several weeks, and yes, over the next several weeks, not just next week, but over the next several weeks, Brewer fever will take over the state. And I know it's a Packer state. We all know that. We acknowledge that. But just like in 2018, Brewers fever took over the state of Wisconsin. It did in 1982. If you see those things in back of me, and those posters in back of me, and how great 82 was, that's in the rearview mirror. This is 2024 and a new chapter. It is time to write a new chapter with this organization, which has been dreadful for most of our lives. Dreadful. No World Series championships. The Oakland A's are moving. Look at all the titles that they've got. They probably should have a few more with the Bash brothers and other teams along the way. They're moving. We'll talk more about a little bit later on in this podcast how Oakland could have been us here in Milwaukee. We'll get to that coming up here in a little bit. But yeah, the Brewers go in to this 3-game set with the Mets, and they have, for a team that people want to look at the Brewers and throw darts at their pitching staff. They don't have enough starting pitching. They don't have enough starting pitching. Well, if they didn't have enough starting pitching, we wouldn't be sitting here right now deciding which 3 guys are going to start this first 3 games of the wild card. Well, the first 2 for sure, maybe game 3. I mean, it would be a tough choice. It is, because you can go all sorts of combinations. Aaron Savale threw his name in the hat, 6 scoreless innings against Pittsburgh on Thursday. Man, he looked great. Frankie Montas. Tobias Myers didn't look great in his last start, but you got to consider him, obviously, heavily. Colin Ray. I think Colin Ray, the writing is on the wall. That kid is, he's 34 years old. That guy is going into the bullpen for some critical mid-relief for Colin Ray. He's going to be in some big spots. So right now, we know that Freddie's going to be the opener. He's going to be starting game 1 next Tuesday at AmFam Field against an opponent to be named. We'll talk more about that a little bit later on. Freddie is going to start game 1. Would the Brewers go with an opener in game 2? Would they? Would they go with an opener in game 2 and mix and match game 2? Council had been known for doing that sort of thing. We've seen that before. Or would they just come flat out and bring in Myers in game 2? I have a feeling Myers is going to be the game 2 starter. Think if they're going to go Tobias Myers, and I'd give the ball to Frankie Montas in game 3. I can make a case for Frankie Montas in game 2, but I think if they lose game 1, game 2, all hands on deck for game 2. in a must-win. Everybody's available, I think, in game 2. You're not saving anybody for game 3. Game 2, all hands on deck for that one. So, yeah, people want to say, well, the Brewers don't have a starting pitching. I was on a national show, and that's first time, the Brewers starting pitching. What do you mean the Brewers starting pitching? Have you watched the Brewers at all? I mean, starting pitching for a bunch of no-name guys have looked pretty darn good this season. People keep hammering on the starting pitching staff. I'm okay with it. Yeah, you don't have the sexy players making $25 million, $30 million. You don't have one of those standout aces on this team. Of course not. Those are all the big market teams. But these guys have done well. Picking up Montes and Savale, low-level moves the Brewers made at the trading deadline. And Savale, they got a little bit before the trading deadline. I love it, man. Those guys have been beneficial. I'm sure some of these guys, those two guys, outperforming some of the big market guys that were out there that everybody wanted. So I'm tired of people throwing stones at this pitching staff. Really. When we're trying to figure out who's going to start game 2 and game 3, you got a lot of good guys here, I think. And as Willie Adames said after clinching last week, he said, we have a lot of hungry guys on this team, a lot of young pitchers, hungry pitchers. These guys are going to be unfazed. They've been unfazed all season long, and this is at the bottom line. This is going to be a great experience for all these guys building for a few years, because we know with the Milwaukee Brewers, although you never really know in baseball, but we like to think that this is just not going to be this year. And I know the Brewers really owe us all one. I get that, because there's been so many failures, and we've been so excited for so many years now in the last 5 years that we were going to have a team that was going to make a deep run, and been fooled. Okay. And I hope that doesn't happen this year, but I have a feeling the Brewers are going to be in for a run here. And that's not jinxing anything. I think the Brewers are that good. I really do. I had one guy on Tim Allen's post-game show the other night, which I'll be on there on Friday night. He told me he was talking about me, and it's great when you're listening to callers talking about you. And he was saying, well, yeah, Chuck Freeman, I love his podcast, but he's negative sometimes. And I'm not. I've been positive about the Milwaukee Brewers, and I think they're going to make a deep run. Of course, you're always a little skeptical being a Milwaukee Brewer fan and being a Wisconsin sports fan. But I love what the Brewers are bringing. And not only pitching, I don't think we've talked enough about their defense. I love what they're doing defensively, up the middle, in the outfield. I mean, show me a weakness on this team defensively. You could talk about maybe Reese Hoskins at first base, but he hasn't really done anything to make me feel anything bad about him. Bowers, I like him over at first base. Ortiz, great at third defensively. Up the middle, Adames, Terang. Show me a better up the middle defense than those two guys. Outfield, you throw whatever you want out in the outfield. How many home run saving catches have those guys made and defensive plays? Not only the home run saving, but whoever you throw out there. Perkins, you name it. You name it. So defensively, yes, understated. Defense, hopefully, and I'm thinking they will, win some ball games for these guys in the postseason. Let's not overlook that. Pitching and defense, I think they got that. And of course, their bullpen. Their bullpen, I've told you my favorite part of this team. Well, there's a lot of things I like about it, but McGill and Williams, 8-9, 8th inning, 9th inning, I love that. Your middle relievers, I'm good with that. It's going to be a fight to see who is going to be left off the playoff roster. I think this weekend against the Mets is critical in that matter. I think some guys are going to earn their spots. I think if a guy gets shelled in middle relief or wherever, that might work against him going into the postseason. It's like one of those preseason games where guys are trying to fight to get on a team. I think the Brewers have a pretty good idea who they're going to use in the postseason on this playoff roster. I think they might have a pretty good idea, but there might be a couple of guys toward the end of that roster on this pitching staff. And I'm talking about the bullpen. Okay. We'll see. Savale, I think even Savale, the way he pitched, I was thinking maybe he might be left off the playoff roster, but who knows? I think Pat Murphy in this postseason, anything goes with that guy. I think that guy could pull out all the stops. And I hear people talk about rookie manager in the postseason. Rookie BS. The guy has been around a little bit. Undaunted, the Milwaukee Brewers. Undaunted. So, yeah, I think this weekend is in terms, again, without having any pressure on these guys, they can set their rotation, their bullpen, everything. It's all cool. Hey, the Mets are the ones who got all the pressure coming up this weekend. Brewers can sit back and play their game, and we'll see if they rest guys or what. You know, there's always that theory out there. Do you rest guys in the final 3 games of the regular season going into that final series? Do you keep playing them, risking injury, or maybe risking that, you know, these guys have gone through 159 games so far? I don't know. There's arguments on both sides of the story. But if I'm going to say one thing that would worry me about this team is stranding runners on base and scoring position and not being able to come up with a clutch hit. I've said it all along. We've seen it. That has been the detriment to these guys going all the way back to the 2018 series against the Dodgers, leaving guys. If they get some clutch hits, the Brewers are in the World Series. Okay. I just felt that was their 2019, same thing. They got a couple of home runs, that wild card game against Washington. 2021, man, it was painful watching them at the plate in that series against the Braves. Last year against the Diamondbacks and losing those 2 games, we want to blame Corbin Burns, but they had some early offense in both of those games and didn't tack on runs. All right, we come back. We'll look at the playoff picture. It's shaping up little by little each day. We talked yesterday about how Monday could be, the Brewers might not know until Monday night who they'll play in the playoffs in the wild card round. We'll get to all that coming up next. Chuck Freeman here on Locked On Brewers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. We are your team every day. Good to have you on here at Locked On Brewers. I love doing this show, and we've been waiting all season for this, haven't we? All season, we've been waiting for our baseball team to get down to the nitty-gritty right here, and here we are, getting down to the postseason. And this show is sponsored in part by Robinhood Gold. You don't need a silver spoon to eat up the financial favors of the 1%. Robinhood Gold allows others to get the rates and perks usually reserved for the high society. Now the resourceful individual with Robinhood Gold can earn the very liberal rate of 4.5% APY on uninvested cash, receive unlimited 1% deposit bonuses, and be rewarded with a handsome 3% retirement boost on an IRA account. Robinhood Gold provides the privilege of the high net worth for any net worth. Those generous benefits are also available for only $5 a month. That's the new gold standard here with Robinhood Gold. Sign up at robinhood.com/gold. Terms apply. For product-specific disclosures, visit robinhood.com/gold. Investing involves risk. Rate may change. Gold membership is offered by Robinhood Gold, LLC. The show is also brought to you by Booking.com. Booking.com. Let's say you're going to go on the road with these guys after they take care of the wild card series. Go to Booking.com. Go to the app. Hey, that's where I book my trips. I'll be going out to the NLCS when the Brewers make it there. World Series possibly, covering the games. Looking forward to that. But maybe you're going to go out to the divisional series, maybe Philadelphia or Los Angeles, how that shapes up. It's we'll talk about that coming up here in a little bit. The right stay can make you a fan of any city, even your baseball rivals. Book today on Booking.com, the official accommodation partner of Major League Baseball. And not only that, golf trips. Hey, my golf trip, I go out to Arizona. I always go to Booking.com and reserve it. It's really easy to use. Hotel, room, flight, you name it. Automobile, all there on Booking.com. Bed and breakfasts. Maybe you want to take the young lady up to a trip to Door County. Go to Booking.com. They will help you book that trip up to Door County this time of the year. Booking.com delivers exactly the right stay for you. Any U.S. city. The right stay can make you a fan of any U.S. city, even your baseball rivals. Booking.com, Booking.yeah. Chuck Freeman here on Locked On Brewers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. We are your team every day. John Heyman. I get alerts, and some of the big boys write some of these articles. John Heyman the other day writing, there's so many different landing spots for Willy Adames. I mean, the body's not dead yet with the Milwaukee Brewers. Far from it. And of course, here in Milwaukee, these national guys just want to come on and pick apart our guy. We saw it with the Bucks with Giannis. He's going here, he's going there. All right. And now we're seeing it with Willy Adames. John Heyman. Way to go, John. Willy Adames, so many landing spots because we can't have good things in Milwaukee. We can't have good things in the Brewers. The Dodgers. Oh, yes, of course. Landing spot for Willy Adames. Oh, the Yankees. They're going to go here. All these. Okay. All right. Body is not dead. The Brewers aren't dead yet. We could talk about that when the playoffs. Now is not the time to talk about landing spots for Willy Adames. Saw another national guy talk about, all these. He listed 5 or 6 different teams. Love all these teams. The Dodgers. Okay. The Baltimore. The Yankees. Shohei in the postseason. Just eager to play in the postseason. How about Arizona? Nothing. Not one mention of the Milwaukee Brewers. And I know sometimes I go off a little bit about that, but it just bothers me. It does. It does bothers me. I just feel like sometimes MLB wants like 5 teams in the league. All right. Philadelphia and LA. They're still fighting for that. They're fighting for that 1 seed. And I still have a feeling. I have a feeling now it's going to be Philadelphia in the 2 seed. And the Brewers would be in the 6 versus 3 seed. And whoever gets the 2 seed is where the Brewers would have to travel coming up on Saturday for game 1 of the NLCS or game 1 of the NLDS, the divisional series. So the Brewers would play the 2nd seed. I'm not looking ahead, but I'm just saying, keep in mind, Philly and the Dodgers, whoever finishes that as the 2 seed, that's who the Brewers would play. And in the wild card race right now, San Diego looks to lock up that top wild card spot right now. I mean, the top wild card spot that's not a divisional winner. So they're probably going to get the 4 seed. I would say San Diego is going to play a home game. They got a 3-game lead on the Mets in Arizona. So San Diego right now going into Friday, it's got a 3-game lead for that 4th seed, and they would play the 5 seed. The Mets in Arizona are tied for that 5 seed. Atlanta is a game out. We talked yesterday on the podcast about the Mets in Atlanta possibly playing a doubleheader on Monday if it applies, if that factors into the wild card race, which is great. The more those teams play, the better. So San Diego, I would say pretty much is clinching that 4 seed. The Mets, Arizona, Atlanta, fighting who will play the Brewers. Fighting who will play the Brewers for that 6th seed. And too soon to tell. Atlanta's a game out. They were 2 games out a couple of days ago. But again, they haven't played in a while because, the unfortunate hurricane that's hitting the southern states. And gosh darn it, if anybody's watching this podcast or listening to us and you're from the South, got our prayers and everything. I was watching some of the national news tonight, and gosh, stay safe. Stay safe. Here in the northern parts, we don't get hurricanes, obviously, so I can only imagine what that is like going through something like that in the southern part. And, Atlanta is that's why their games these last 2 nights have been washed out because of the hurricane that is hitting ground in Florida and the southern states. But anyway, San Diego, the Mets in Arizona, and Atlanta. San Diego's pretty much clinched, not yet officially, but clinched that 4 seed with the Mets, Arizona, and Atlanta, the likely opponent for the Brewers coming up on Tuesday. Oakland was watching the A's final game in Oakland today, final home game. They packed them in. How that could have been us. Yeah, that could have been us. We'll talk about that next here on Locked On Brewers. Locked On Brewers, part of Locked On Podcast Network. We are your team every day. Good to have you along here on Locked On Brewers. Appreciate everybody for supporting the podcast right here. Whether you're watching us on Google or you're watching us on YouTube, our YouTube page, Locked On Brewers, hit the subscribe button, hit the bell that alerts you every time we drop an episode here on Locked On Brewers. We are going to be going 7 days a week once we get postseason underway for the Milwaukee Brewers. 7 days a week. We'll have episodes Saturday and Sunday, a little shorter on the weekends, but we will be delivering for you guys because this is where you come. This is where you come. This is where we're going to be wrapping things up. Prize Picks. Prize Picks is America's #1 daily fantasy sports app for a number of different reasons. It's easy to play for one, and it's easy to maneuver around there. Plus, unlike other apps, Prize Picks, it's just you against the numbers. All you do is pick more or less on the 2 to 6 player stat projections and watch those winnings roll in. Football, NBA, which is starting up in a month or so, you could win up to 100 times your money with Prize Picks with those 4 picks. MLB as well. But you got to download the Prize Picks app. You use that promo code Locked On MLB. You'll get $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't even have to win, but that promo code is Locked On MLB on Prize Picks. You get $50 instantly when you play $5. Again, you don't have to win to get the $50 bonus. It's automatically guaranteed when you play the $5. Prize Picks, run your game. Again, with as little as 4 correct picks, more or less on player stats, you can watch those winnings roll in. Prize Picks, a number one daily fantasy sports app in America, over 5 million active members. But again, download the app, get the $50 instantly when you play $5 by using the promo code Locked On MLB. Chuck Freeman, down the stretch we come here on Locked On Brewers. They packed them in Oakland. You know, they've been routinely drawing maybe a couple of hundred fans for games in recent years, but last game of the season, their storied history, and watching that game, I could not help but think that could have been us in the mid-90s. And some of you guys, I put that on Twitter, denied that and said, well, the problem is, the difference was a couple of people wrote, Oakland didn't have anybody going to their games. In the mid-90s, we didn't have anybody going to Brewer games. I got news for you. Maybe for some of you guys who weren't around or too small, there was a couple of thousand people going to Brewer games. The Brewers could not compete. Baseball, it was out of whack like it is now, but the Brewers weren't signing anybody. The most they were paying for a player, they'd pay $5 million for Mark Loretta. Okay. And baseball looked to be dead. The Brewers had every right to move to Charlotte, but they didn't move. I still don't know. I mean, that stadium vote passed by 1 vote, and that's because they got a politician to change his vote from no to yes. And it passed by 1 vote. Otherwise, there would be no Locked On Brewers. There'd be no Brewers for us to talk about. We might be, oh God, forget, we would be Chicago Cubs fans. Okay. So in the mid-90s, yes, in 96, they could have left. County Stadium, they needed a new stadium. It was desolate. Nobody was going to games. And I did sports talk in Milwaukee, and the Brewers were not even a topic. The only topic that people talked about is whether or not they're going to get a stadium. And most of the people said, the Brewers are irrelevant. Yes, people were saying the Brewers were irrelevant. Oh, they don't deserve a stadium. Nobody's going to the games right now the way they are. Why do we want to build a new stadium? It would be a white elephant. Well, it turns out they built the stadium, and when they put the roof on, people were even more angry. Why do we got to have a roof? Turns out that stadium was the best thing that ever happened to the Milwaukee Brewers, and putting on the roof, the second best thing. And here we are. But we could have been the Oakland A's. You don't support your team, that's what's going to happen. Yeah, everybody came out to see the Oakland A's play today in their final game, and I get that. All right. I mean, it's just hard for me to fathom that the A's are leaving Oakland, because when I grew up as a kid, the Oakland A's were the team in the 70s and the Bash Brothers in the 80s. And they had some good teams after that with Moneyball. Hard to believe Oakland is losing their team, but that's what happens if you don't support your team. But the organization also has a commitment to the fans to put out a winning product. We got lucky in the mid-90s because it was not a winning product in Milwaukee. Yet we were able to keep it. Bud Selig, Thank you, thank you, thank you. I don't think he was a real great owner of the team, but he brought baseball to Milwaukee and he kept baseball in Milwaukee. All right, that's going to do it for Locked On Brewers, everybody. Again, wherever you get your podcast, we're on Google, Spotify, Apple, all the major platforms. Okay, all the major platforms, you can download Locked On Brewers, and please hit the subscribe button, hit the alert on there. That alerts you every time we drop an episode on Locked On Brewers. And of course, our growing YouTube page. Please support that. I ask you, go to Locked On Brewers. Even if you just get the downloads on the audio side, go to Locked On Brewers on YouTube. Hit the subscribe button, hit the bell, hit the like. Please support the podcast. All the content is free. And I love talking Brewers fans with you great Brewer fans out there. We got a lot to play for. We're going to have a big week next week. I'll be back here Sunday night, late Sunday night, dropping the podcast for Monday. And we'll see how things are shaping up. We'll see if the Brewers have a playoff opponent at that point or not. It's going to do it for the show today. Thanks for everybody, all you everydayers, for making Locked On Brewers the #1 Brewers podcast on the internet. For your second listen, go to Locked On MLB. Our guy Sully will talk about all the pennant races on Locked On MLB. Chuck Freeman, Locked On Brewers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. We are your team every day. Have yourself a great weekend, everybody.